part of the Sondheim finalist exhibition, and so her works are the fiber and woven pieces. And then Brandon has pieces that are the painted works that are actually on t-shirts if you look closely. And we have a wonderful moderator for our conversation tonight. So Jenné Afiya Matthews is an artist and culture worker based in Baltimore, and we're just so happy to have you here. So I'm gonna turn it over to you.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me? Yes. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Yes. I want everybody to take a moment to settle in and arrive in the space. I want you to take 30 seconds to a minute. When I feel the time is right, I'll call you back, but to notice where you are. To look to your left, to look to your right, to look in front of you, to look behind you, and really, open this container with your noticings. All right. I really want to again thank you all for being here, taking time out of your schedules to speak about this beautiful work. I know life is busy, 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 and there's a lot going on. And so, again, this is an honor and a privilege to be here. So, Brandon and Aliana, I'm going to pass it right on over to you because this is not about me. I've been over here all night long. And I want for you both to speak about your origin stories as artists. I know that you both share a textile lineage and a relationship to fibers, but I want you to speak to how you all began and what brought you here to this work.
So I'll go first. It's a great question too. So I began my practice as an airbrush artist at the age of 12.
Can you just speak up a little more?
I will. I'm working towards it. So yeah, I began at age 12 as an airbrush artist. I started painting t-shirts for my friends and for my families, and I eventually got to the automotive industry. And I didn't really think about art school or anything like that. It was mostly just like the craft of airbrushing and just the joy of just relating to people. So I saw it as like a connection through t-shirts. So that's my origin. And I eventually went to art school. I went to Tennessee State University in Nashville. Went to the University of Tennessee, Knoxville for my master's. And I currently teach at the University of Maryland in College Park. So it's a long transition from just t-shirts to fine art, but it's a pretty honest one, I would say. It is my story.
So I'm very soft-spoken, so if I'm not talking loud enough, let me know. So I am originally from DC, and I grew up in a household that really advocated for find your life's passion, make it your life's work, and give back to others. That's what my mom constantly said. But in my bedroom, I had free range to do whatever I wanted. And so there, I collected a lot of materials. That's when I first started doing mixed media art. And I was doing a lot of sewing by hand. So I would say my connection to textiles started in elementary school, sewing by hand, making pillows, making different things. And I went to North Carolina A&T for undergrad, and there I double majored in social work and visual arts media design. And when I was working on my thesis senior exhibition, my grandmother passed away. And through that experience, it inspired me to connect back to that childhood joy of making and putting things together and exploring material. And so at the time I was really mainly painting. And so when that happened, that's when fiber got introduced into my work. And so fiber's just taken over at this point.
Thank you for sharing. And to speak again about your personal narratives, both of you work deeply with that. It's very evident in this show. And I wanted you to speak to both the beauty and joy in that, and also the tension in when you are talking about people your families, your lives, it's not abstract, this is pulling from your day-to-day, like the beauty in that, the tension in that. And there's also a quote from the beautifully written show text, which I encourage you all to read. It's on the paper, it's on the walls, that also kind of touches on that, which is the moment you recognize yourself in the texture of another's life.
The moment you recognize yourself.
The quote is, the moment you recognize yourself in the texture of another's life.
So the question, so like, can you go back to the question?
Yes, no, that text just really takes you to another place, but what I want you both to share is you both are working deeply with your personal narratives, with your family's lives. The work is not impersonal, and there can be like a beauty and joy in that, but also a tension in that. And I'm curious about how you as artists navigate that, and what that's like for this body of work, but also like in general in your making practice.
I guess I'll speak a little bit about the self-portrait that's here. My work is very personal in that all of my work starts from my inner experiences, and it starts from what I need. And so my work is very much about healing, and it's about me working through whatever internal dialogues I need to work through. And so through my work, my hope is that I start very personal and people are inspired to do their own self-discovery through that. And so even with this self-portrait, these are portraits of me in a bathtub in 2020, and it's probably one of maybe 2 works that I did during 2020. It was a very challenging time, as all of you know. But like, when we talk about personal, like, these were self-portraits that are really documenting my self-care process and like the repetition of caring for myself. And so in all of my work, there's repetition, whether it's in my self-portraits or when it's in the weavings that I do, or every once in a while you'll see patterns in the surface pattern design prints I do. So there's about the repetition of caring for myself, the repetition of waking up each day and having to find new ways to love myself, find new ways to heal, find new ways to just be a better person. And so all of my work is rooted.
Yeah, so I would say for me, this is like a breakthrough work of art, a series of art, excuse me. Because I have a child now, so it sort of changes the process of how I work and like the amount of time that I have to process things. So like, I had to think through like, you know, I guess what's closest to me, and like what do I really want to not make for like you guys, but like more so for myself. So I'm usually into like the found object. I like transforming like the mundane to something else. And I've never really spent time with t-shirts. So as an airbrush artist, I was constantly like in a cycle of taking orders, taking custom orders and sort of painting them, but it was never for myself, it was for the client. So for this body of work, I wanted to transform just the average, everyday, common t-shirt that we all wear, something that we all can identify with, but with images from like my everyday life. So these are walks around my neighborhood, which is pretty much like 3 blocks from here. So I haven't really laid it out yet, but there's a legend or like a map where I take it out on a stroll through the neighborhoods, and I'll like take pictures or, you know, just normal parent stuff, you know, like mundane stuff. But I wanted to like document it in a different way. And I'm also sort of hiding and protecting some of the subjects, except for myself, which is another part of like it being personal, is that like I don't have to expose every single person that's involved in it. So yeah, that's sort of like the breakthrough where I am with making my work right now.
Yeah. And as an extension of that question, and I think you both touched on this, how does the work speak to you and how it wants to be made? And like, can you all speak a little bit about that reciprocal relationship when it comes to textures, materials you're choosing? Sometimes there's like pieces of you in the work, but also color and scale, because there's a lot of variety of all of that in this room.
The form, like the t-shirt form, I didn't want to stray away from it. I kind of wanted it to be a t-shirt, like a T-shape, t-shirt. The scale comes from just, like, these are my t-shirts. So these are old worn shirts that I just sort of kept, like, sourcing my own cotton material for fabrics. I mean, for canvases. Set scale.
Scale, color, texture, yes.
Let me think about the color
Yeah,
for a
you can
minute.
go back.
So for me, sorry.
Absolutely, yeah. How does the work ask to be made, like that reciprocal relationship? I think sometimes when we talk about work, I think there's this idea that an artist tells the work what it is. When in fact in our conversations prior to this, we talked about how there's, you know, this conversation between the world that we see and the world beyond. I call it from that world to this, and how it's a, yes, ashe, yes, the portal is speaking. And, but the idea, like the artist conversation between the seen and the unseen, like people could even refer to it as a conjuring down of the work. And so I wanted you all to speak to like what that process can be like, and how the work says, yes, I want to be blue, or no, I want to be green, or yes, I want to be made out of your t-shirts, or yes, I want you to incorporate elements of your hair, or yes, I want you to use photos and, you know, you in the bathtub. Like, how does that, like, yes and no process with the work? Because we also spoke about the work being alive. Like, these works are alive, and they are enlivened continually by us engaging with them over and over again.
Yeah, so all of my work is completely intuitive, and I'm not doing hardly any planning with it.
Okay.
For these like smaller works in this area in particular, all of these are new works I created for the show. And coming off of the Sondheim exhibition, I was in a space where I was feeling, this is the smallest scale that like probably anyone familiar with my work has seen. And so I was really interested in like using this opportunity to explore things that I was once afraid to do. And so I think every piece kind of has its own lesson in it. Every piece has an aspect that I've been wanting to try that I haven't yet. And these in particular are really about helping to unlock the fears that I had within. And so some of these materials are materials that have like been in my studio for years, I just never touched. And so I think it's definitely representative of a time period where I was being called to return back to my old ways of working. So like these old pieces of canvases I once painted on, these old pieces of like patterns, batik patterns I once printed. And so it's definitely a calling to like return to what already exists without feeling like everything has to be brand new. And also like scaling back and being intentional about that scaling back. That's been special. And even with this piece, for me, this was a lesson in like simplicity. And I struggled with it. I struggled with like knowing when it's okay to not like do more. This piece at the top here was really about me sewing into something that I wove, and that was terrifying, but it's something I've been wanting to do for a while. So really like, just doing the things I've been afraid of, that's what the work was, in this time period, was calling me to do.
And could you point out the names of those pieces for us? It's okay, it's okay, no. It's okay.
Yeah, it's over here if you want it.
Yeah. Okay. I have some of them. So the names are also like very much in alignment with whatever the lesson is. So this one is, I think, yeah, be still, it's enough. The top one is fly, surrender to the air and ride it. The bottom is finding harmony in contradictions. And this one on the left is breathing, holding, bridging.
Thank you.
Yeah, so to add to that, like the simplicity part, I think for me, like making these works, I kept it as simple as possible. In the process, just kind of scrolling through my phone, looking at images, but not just any image, but images that I felt that I sort of gravitated to and I felt would work best. So these are collages. These are gesso t-shirts that I've collaged polytab fabric. If anyone has, there's like any mural makers in here. So it's called polytab. It's a fabric. Yeah, it's a fabric that it's very flexible. It's used in a lot of like clothing, like business suits. So
say the name again?
polytab.
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 So it's polyester with other composites in it?
Potentially, I think.
You should know your materials.
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I do. So yeah, polytab fabric, which you can gesso and you could adhere it to any surfaces to create murals indoors. So pretty much it's a mural technology that was created in Philadelphia. But I'm using it on t-shirts, which I've sort of thought about, like I'm into like kind of these sort of contradictions or these like things that how you use materials. They don't necessarily have to make sense in where and how you place them. And it's really freeing for me to kind of work in that way and not to overthink, but to sort of trust. Which is sort of linked to parenthood and just being a human being in general. Like there's a level of control, but then there's like the practice of letting go of control that I actually enjoy. So yeah, I think this, like I said, I'm really happy with this body of work. It's a breakthrough from my other works, but yeah, that's all I can say about the process. It's just I'm sort of working through it.
Yeah, and it speaks to materials, but I think you both have actually spoken very expertly and skillfully about your knowledge of materials, but that also gets to a larger conversation that we also had in our call around the idea of craft. And sometimes in this space, in the fine art world, craft can be seen as a dirty word or as a term that is, the word that's coming to mind is belittling, but that minimizes the work. And I think there's a lot to piece out there between who gets assigned craft and who gets assigned fine artist. Craft usually gets assigned to Black and brown folk, to women, et cetera, et cetera. But I want you to speak a little bit about that craft and how you feel about that word in relationship to your work, in relationship to you as an artist in general, and even how it's evolved, how it's changed, the tensions, the pluses, the minuses, all of that. And you can plead the fifth too if you would like.
I'm still processing this question. As a fiber artist, this is something that I have to deal with all the time, and I'm in a tender spot of processing what that means for me. But I definitely believe in embracing craft, embracing the skill sets that have been passed down throughout generations, embracing the practices that our ancestors did to honor memory and our families, and to also make a living. And so, yeah, it's a sensitive topic, and it's a bit tender for me at the moment, but I can maybe come back to it after.
Yeah, so I guess I'll start by saying that my so I grew up in Memphis, Tennessee. So I'm from Memphis, Tennessee. So my grandfather used to fix stuff around the house a lot, and he would do it in a way that was like, it was very intentional, but he would have to do it in a way. Like he would like in the wintertime, he would sort of fix the windows with things that don't make sense, but it block the wind or it block the breeze. So I grew up seeing him like fix stuff like that, and I made fun of it when I was little, but now I appreciate it in terms of how I work. That like you can be meticulous and very like crafty with it, but if you can fix it and it works, that's a solution. So to kind of segue to the craft thing too, I grew up with a lot of craftsmen, I would say, or women and men, both who. I had an aunt who was a tailor. I think everybody's grandma makes quilts, so like quilting and stuff like that, who my uncle introduced me to. And so that was sort of a cultural thing that I realized that like most airbrush artists, I guess where I'm from, were Black and Latino. And it was it was in the culture of like automobiles, t-shirts, fashion, hip hop. I don't know, so I looked at like museums and high art when I went to museums, but I didn't really sit there for too long. I mostly sort of appreciated the vehicle of a t-shirt and fashion. So at this point, I really don't acknowledge like high and low. I think it's just like art, or it's just creativity, like how you plan to express yourself. So that craft and high art conversation, I'm sort of at a point where I don't really I acknowledge it, but there isn't a high and a low anymore to me. So
It just is.
it just is. I think people can fit in both. They can call themselves what they want, but yeah, it is what it is. I don't know. We kind of make things and we create these boundaries for ourselves. But I think about like William Edmondson, the guy who made the tombstone. He was one of the first African Americans to have a show at the MoMA. Or I think about like
What was his name?
William Edmondson. Also think about there's like a list of artists who what's the guy? He's from Alabama. He worked with metals. I told you guys on the Zoom.
You sure did.
Geez, I'm blanking in front of those people. But like there's like a lot of names of people who like I don't think they would call themselves high or like they would rank themselves as high art. They were just like makers or artists. So yeah, it's like a random. That's how I feel about like high and low.
Yeah. And that's a part of it. This is a conversation.
Yeah.
This is a conversation. We at home, we literally at the living room furniture.
I just want to add that I think something that's powerful about like working in textiles and working in things that are considered craft is that it's relatable, and I think that's part of what scares people. So when it comes to fiber, I think everybody wants to touch it, and it's largely because it's one of the first things that we really interact with as people, and so we put it on every day. We're surrounded by it. It's passed down to us. Like we have such an intimate relationship with these materials, and I think that's what the power in it. And I think sometimes it's the power of like it being something that everybody can access is what's intimidating.
Yeah. And did you have a question?
No, I want to make a statement. Over here.
Yeah. What's the question?
The American Craft Museum, which was on 53rd Street opposite MoMA, got a new headquarters about 30 years ago on Columbus Circle. And what they did when they moved is they became the Museum of Art and Design, because they felt, as the leading museum for craft, that craft was a term that needed to be more intentional in encompassing the work of artists. And that includes ceramics, it includes textiles and so forth. And I think it's very important here in Baltimore to understand that, because craft is art, it's a discipline. And I think in the Museum of Art and Design, what they did is they elevated it for collectors and for people who are interested. And I think for all of us here in Baltimore, we have such an incredible creative scene that it's important to understand that, upgrade that distinction, that kind of thinking in the collecting and making world. So it's a compliment, but it's also a little history of where we've come from.
I appreciate you providing that context. Oh,
I didn't want to disrupt the flow though. Are we asking questions or are we?
I mean, y'all are feeling moved by this conversation on craft. I did have a show here with a Q&A. If the people are feeling moved, let's talk. Let's talk. What's up?
I think, again, I don't know if this is a question or a statement, but listening to specifically you talk about craft and the way the folks you were raised with work, I'm thinking about like intuitiveness and naturalness and labor. And why, when it comes to things that people deem natural to Africans or Black people, it's not valued as much. And that's kind of the first thing that popped into my mind. Specifically yours as well, like the crafting, the naturalness of it, the fact that we feel close to it. There's this, I mean, it's a very like, it's harrowing to think about the ways that we're like exploited. Like, so the fact that you come from a labor background working with car parts, we look at these materials, I'm thinking about like nurture, care, like physically putting it on me. And I think the work that you all do is so related to like mundane aspects of Blackness that, to your question about like why craft is undervalued, it's because it's kind of Black, you know? And I guess what I appreciate in this work is the lack of the use of that term. It's not so much focused on that identity because it's very apparent in the work. So.
Yeah. We literally have someone knitting in the space right now. So I know that like the craft element that you all felt so moved to speak on it. And thank you both for sharing and for that context. And Nia, that really gets to my question and what you all both shared in both of your previous statements is between craft and the everyday, but craft and ritual. And I want you all to share with us the ritualistic elements of your work, maybe even in process. As I told them both, I am a process person, so please tell me all, like if you gotta have a certain radio station on, you gotta drink from a certain mug, I'd love to hear that, like whatever you're willing to share, but also, yes, the ritualistic elements that are in what we see and how that connects to your personal stories and narratives, what have you, but yeah, that ritual piece, I would love for you to share.
So I'll share that in all the mediums that I've ever worked with, weaving at the loom feels like the closest I am to my ancestors. And so that's really largely why it's taken over my practice so much. And, you know, again, that process is completely intuitive. I'm not planning anything, I'm not using any type of pattern. It's really just about embracing the process, embracing the gifts that I've been given, and embracing that whatever comes off the loom is going to be beautiful as it's supposed to be. And I work in silence a lot, I think. I feel like that's a rare thing, but yeah, I work in silence a lot. And when it comes to like my hand-dyed locks that are hanging up, those are, a big part of my practice is also about aligning what I value with how I spend my time. And so what I love about those is that I can do them anywhere. And so I've done it on dates, I've done it like walking around the neighborhood. So I love the fact that that process allows me to be very present with the people that I love and very present like in my environment.
Yeah, I think for me too, it's a new thing, like, once again, as a parent, as a 40-year-old parent, and a 2-year-old, it's different, is that like, you know, longevity, working through things. So as an airbrush artist, like a lot of people have carpets on them from holding the stiff. So, you know, like the joints, I'm highly aware of that. So in the studio, you know, it starts really slow. It starts with like sometimes stretching or like going for a run before I go to the studio, if I can. Because now it's like a 3-hour at a time studio kind of burst. I can't even afford to do more than 3 hours. But it'll get better later as the kid gets older and all that. I can't different, you know, mental. But yeah, I think like taking care of the body. I stand on these pads, so I'm just kind of aware of like how I am. Like I want to do this for a long time, and you know, you got to take care of that one vehicle you have during this journey. But in terms of like I guess when you asked that question, I thought about the studio. I'm just thinking about like the studio in general. It's definitely a privilege to have a studio because, you know, there's times when you can't find a space to work properly or you have to work really small. So having a studio is a great, I guess being thankful too, just like being grateful for like the small things. And then you can kind of, I feel like I can work better when I start with like a thankful space. You know, so that's my answer to the question.
And I'm going to use those to speak about the creation of those works, but relationship to water in general, and also how water is an element, but also a portal. Again, that portal of conjuration back and forth, and why you chose to evoke watery imagery in those works? Why did it feel important, essential, necessary, etc.?
Maybe I can say this, but like, I didn't really think too hard about like the water part. I just knew it was an image that like felt tender and soft, you know? And then when you showed your piece and it went like right across from it.
That was not intentional.
It
It was just one of those moments.
But yeah, I think the water, I can just do a brain dump, like ritual, cleansing, calmness. And I think while painting it too, it was a good experience. Contrasting like a beach or like the kitschy airbrush beach scene that you get at most like beachfronts with a bathtub. Like I think like that contrast was pleasurable for me to kind of put against each other, or juxtapose if you want to use the word. Like, yeah, I think just I really enjoy composing. So I compose these really small sketches, and then if it makes sense, I'll go with it. But I didn't really think too much about like what the water meant. I just know how it felt.
So what made you make it blue?
I don't know.
Interesting. I mean, sometimes it's just an intuitive thing.
I have a question. Could you talk about the artists who inspired you? Where do you get your inspiration from other artists who have probably addressed issues that you're addressing yourself?
Okay, so I'll touch on the water real quick and then come back to that question. So we had a completely different self-portrait over there originally. And I was just telling the kids, like, oh, I have another self-portrait if you want to see it. And when I brought it in, we were like, oh, they're both bathtubs. So it was really just just one of those moments. But for me, these bathtubs represented like doing spiritual baths every week. And like, what does it look like to have Sundays as like sacred ritual time? What does it look like to incorporate spiritual baths into my self-care practice? So yeah, that piece is actually called Water Gaze. So it is very centered in the meditation of water. And for me, I would say my biggest inspiration is Faith Ringgold. When I was in college, before my grandmother passed away, she lived with my parents. And she would sit in the living room every day and talk about this print that was in the living room. And she would say, oh, they're having such a good time. Like, oh, look at them, they're having such a good time. She would talk about this work of art every single day. And I was very patient about it, but I wasn't giving it a lot of attention either. And it wasn't until after she passed that I realized, like, she's been talking about a Faith Ringgold piece every single day in front of me. And and so I really like took that as like, I think sometimes we just receive those messages, and moving into fiber feels like something that I was destined and supposed to be doing. And Faith Ringgold was already an artist that I had began loving around that time period. And so for my grandmother to be talking about it every single day, it kind of just affirmed that. But definitely Faith Ringgold for like her use of word, her use of fiber, but also her activism.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say for me, David Hammons is one of my like go-tos. In grad school, I had a studio visit with Willie Cole, who really changed my life. I came into the grad program airbrushing, and I was airbrushing on objects, trying to break the t-shirt mold and sort of repetition. And then I found like some basketballs that I was sort of working with, but I hadn't really like fully developed yet. And he gave me the studio visit, and he told me to listen to the object, which was very abstract, but it stuck with me. So like within the next 2 weeks, I wouldn't say the object told me to do that, but I think his words influenced how I approach objects and how I make moves.
So you listen to the
I
object.
listen to the object. I think yeah, he was very influential. There's a lot of artists. I think most artists who don't really call themselves artists are inspiring. like the humbleness and like it keeps me kind of going in a way. Yeah. Oh, and then there's a guy who taught me how to airbrush when I was 12. His name is Typhoon, but his name is Tony. I think Tony Thompson, but he goes by Typhoon. He taught me when I was 12, and I would go to his studio every Saturday to take just like 1 hour lessons. So my experience in high school was wild because I was the popular guy who airbrushed all the t-shirts, and so thankful to him, I was able to like, I saw myself as an artist really, before I knew what an artist really looks like, or I guess a popular museum gallery artist. It was more like I was how do I say it? Kind of a practitioner, or like just I don't know the identity, but like the name, but I think I did identify as an artist because of Typhoon. So.
Thank you, Ashley, for the question. Yes, you can, Shannon.
Just with your answer there. So, like you're inspired by, the objects calling out to you, what's in front of you, what's being present, actual scenes from your life. You also sort of like showcase this in your work. And then you mentioned Faith Mingle, who I remember. One of her works that I really liked was, I think it was called like Through Her Sen or something, where it was like sort of like a wedding scene. And it was like just so full of like joy, because it was like, it always made me think of like what could be. So I just want to know what keeps you like, when you make a work of art, what keeps you thinking like where I am, what's in my present versus what could be? Or is it like what you're currently doing helping you become what you want to be? I guess like what keeps you grounded in like current objects that are speaking to you, current events, versus like the future that you invent of what could be? Like how do you stay here versus?
I've always been the type of artist that I can't create under any conditions. Like in the pandemic, I barely made work. This year has been really challenging, and so for me, when there's too many current events going on, like I kind of just need to take a step back. I do a lot of like self-care practices during that time. But I'm really thankful for people in my life, like even sending me text messages. One of them's in the room. Just sending me text messages like, the world needs your art right now. Like, continue to keep going. Because for me, I struggle to feel that art is what I'm supposed to be doing at this time when the world is on fire and all these things are happening. I find it really hard to just like do the work, focus on art. And so, yeah, it's about being present in what I can do and also listening to the people around me who are pouring into me and just affirming the fact that what we're doing is important even during these times. And also in that conversation, I've been thinking a lot about like radical dreaming, right? Like what does it mean for us to think about what life could be like? How can I create worlds where people can experience something different, something more joyful, something more peaceful, something more powerful, So really thinking about dreaming, and so being present, listening to people around me, and also like thinking into the future that doesn't necessarily exist, but knowing that it's possible.
Just like I say, ditto with that. I think time, just like the more the older you get, the more things seem kind of playful. Like I love like the imagination, how you can just play with things. But I don't necessarily like think of people when I'm doing it. I think that's so it's sort of an internal drive that keeps me going. And I think luckily I have a momentum that I can show in spaces or in public. I was also in the graffiti scene, so that sort of went to my mind. Like if no one sees it, if I can't show it in a gallery, I can put it in public somewhere, and someone will see it. But yeah, it's more internal. I think I'm just kind of excited to play with things and transform stuff and fail at things. And just have fun.
Thank you.
I was just gonna ask you for like, and also accepting the fact that we deserve that, like we deserve to be able to just dream and play and just have fun. We're more than deserving of taking up that type of space.
Absolutely. And I'm just so glad y'all asked the question, this is so wonderful. And before we open up the floor for more Q&A, I did want to ask you all, because you just spoke about this, about things that kind of happened as you brought the work in the space, and again, the work speaking. Was there anything else that happened when you all got here that surprised you, that excited you, that made this container come more alive as you started to hang and display things in here?
I would say like the staff. I mean, not to just sound all cheesy, but I think the staff, like the people that we work with, you don't get this every time you exhibit or show. And I guess the amount, I was going to say like protection, like the collaboration, like the small meetings that we had maybe like 3 or 4 meetings. So it wasn't just like, hey, you know, what are you making? Let's go to your studio. It wasn't so like transactional and cold. It was like pretty warm. It was exactly what like we wanted. 2 introverts. So yeah, it's just a great experience altogether.
Yeah, I think this was a special experience, and the fact that like it was so intentionally brought together. I don't know what it is, but like her intentionally pairing us together, I think really sets the foundation for what an exhibition experience is going to be when it has that level of like care and love to it. And also like when we did a studio visit with Brandon, like none of these works over here really existed yet. Because you know I was focused on the Sondheim so much, I just hadn't like been able to have the space to create much. So it was also collaborative in the sense of like we had just met, we didn't know each other, but the fact that we were paired together for this exhibition, the process has so much love and care and patience to it, and like creating those moments of studio visits and just collaboration and bouncing ideas off of each other and discussing color and allowing that like space of inspiration to happen is really nice.
That's beautiful. I think for me, my last question before I open up the floor completely to Q&A, and then also we want to give you some time too to continue to interact with the work. So we'll probably do about 3 or 4 more questions for Q&A, and then you all can roam about as you wish. But to close us out, the title is so succinct, close enough, but it evokes so much. So I wanted to hear what you all felt, and there's also a story about how the title was longer, so if you all want to share like kind of how that process went, but what close enough evokes for you as artists, but also for your body work. I mean,
I mean, I can talk up to the process.
Yeah.
A little bit. Yeah, just, of course, I have 2 incredible artists to bounce from, but just anytime I meet with them, I write a lot of little things and phrases that they were saying, and a lot of it, I think Brandon just mentioned, is about protection, and this sort of balance between how much you expose yourself as an artist and how much you want to keep sacred, and how much of that, sometimes, you know, you have the space to do that for yourself, but sometimes enough, like some spaces you don't. So I created a list of titles, and during one of our conversations, I read through them, and they selected 2 that they really liked, but something that we were really thinking about was creating a really long title, rather than this really short and brief. So we met at Aliana's studio, and they had given me the task of coming up with a longer title. And I came up with the first part to the curatorial statement, and Close Enough was the only one that really, as I was writing the curatorial statement, really kept flowing into every phrase and piece that they had mentioned prior. So title was actually Close Enough to Know Something Sacred Happened Here. And that was both to what we were experiencing, I think, in the space of creating together, working together, as well as what both of these artists carry, just individually and within their communities, their families, their friendships, is that anyone who gets to know them knows that they have something sacred that's happening. So that was it. But then sort of the conversation kept going, and it just needed to be close enough, because that gives you everything you need to know, and then you can read the rest if you give the time. But yeah, I don't know how y'all experienced it, but that's how I experienced it.
I think coming up with the title was like a really exciting period, especially since we weren't really doing it, but we were just responding to all these beautiful, the language is just beautiful, and so just being able to sit back and know that whoever is like coming up with this language is someone who loves us and cares for us and is moving through this process with so much intention, like it was just really exciting. We got really excited about it. Yeah. And I think, for us, Close Enough is also about, we both share layers of vulnerability, layers of like our personal life, but we're also very protective and private at the same time. So you can't see everything. And so Close Enough is
Which also speaks to like the process of some of my paintings. It's about opacity. So I'm using 7 or 8 layers of like oil paint over airbrush acrylic. So I'm sort of pushing back a lot of the details of certain things. And so I sort of pitched that word to Vanessa, and I think close enough was close enough to the word opacity without saying opacity.
Thank you both. I want to give you all a round of applause. Q&A, could you next? I put them on the spot with that one.
That's a lot.
But there's anything you want to share.
Let's see. Untitled Art Houston.
Okay.
We're going to be ready for that one next month, actually.
Congratulations.
I am resting, and also I have a residency at Haystack in September, so I'll be gone for the first 2 weeks in September, playing with their looms and laser cutters and wood shops and stuff.
Amazing. I think we have time for about 3 questions. So, well, y'all already, popcorn into each other, so let's go, Bree.
Thank you both for letting us into your process, a little bit of your origins and your journeys as artists. As an artist who's also a critic, I'm always interested in how other artists process and take or discard criticism. So could either or both of you speak to how do you process criticism, and then what do you do with it in your artistic practice?
I would say for me, like critiques can be constructive in a way, so I think over time I've developed the tough skin. I think I have, but especially from airbrushing in public, if someone doesn't like it, they're pretty straightforward about it, they're not looking for it. But in terms of like my personal work, it's great to hear from people, but criticism, like how do I deal with it, or
How do you process, and what do you, I'm not even saying deal with, but if that's how you
how do I
deal with it?
process it? I try to turn it into I make notes, and I'll refer to things that I think is worthy of like my time, but yeah, I'm also not a big poster, so like I think the social media thing doesn't really affect me as much, but I'm not online a lot.
So I enjoy critiques. When I was in undergrad, the director of our program, Romeo Carter, that's my mentor, and he was very honest about critiques, and I got a lot of joy out of them because I like the energy of people pushing you to be better. I think it's just really important to have that balance between making sure that it's coming from the right place, and also knowing how to decide what critique would actually help you, what critique does not apply to you, because everyone's opinions don't actually apply to like your work. Especially as someone who like works relatively like very intuitively. Yeah, it's just about finding that balance between what critique would actually help me versus what is not for me. But I would like to have more critiques in my life as far as like studio critiques, art critiques. I think they're important for like artist development.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
I have a question. Okay, I was writing down because I get a little nervous when I'm talking. I guess my question for both of you is, which also thank you so much for allowing us in this space and to see your work. What's your favorite part of the process? Because like a lot of times we get like to that end result and it's like, what's happening like during that? Like Brandon, you talked about like how you take a lot of walks and like you're surrounded by like neighborhoods and that inspires like the work that you do. So I know that's a part of the process, but is that like your favorite part? Is that what keeps you going? Because I find that sometimes I'm in like this creative block, and forgive me if I pronounce your name wrong, Aliana? Aliana. You mentioned too like how a lot of events occur and like it's really hard to like keep going and like to produce work. So it's like, what keeps you kind of going? Like something is keeping you all going to still produce the work. So like, where's the joy and like, what keeps you going, I guess? Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's like constructing new ideas. Like this took 5 years. I mean, I'm sort of embarrassed to say it took 5 years to build these, but like.
And don't be embarrassed by that.
Well, no, I'm just talking all through, like.
Okay.
Like that sat in my studio for at least 5 years because I was hesitant to move forward with it and see what happens. But like, yeah, constructing new things are kind of scary in a way. Because you know, once you break through, you gotta follow through with it, and it's sort of like a downhill slide. And you're just in the moment. But I wanted to make sure that like in the build-up of it, I'm intentional with giving this a thought. So that's actually fun, but it's also like kind of challenging, yeah, in a way too.
So for me, around this time period, you know, there's just a lot going on in the world. Just finished the Sondheim, and for me, I wanted to focus on the joy. And so I was very intentional about like these smaller, newer works. Like part of the reason why they're smaller scale too is because that felt more joyful for me at that time. And so it was really about like me being playful and like these being works that most people haven't seen from me before, and like the liberation that comes with that. And so for me, the best part of this process was like being in it and like finally doing things that I've been hesitant to do. Also, like I go on a lot of walks, meditation every day, stretching after showers, and really like doing a lot of journaling. I don't do any sketches of what I'm going to do with my work, but I do journal a lot.
Thank you. Thank you.
I was curious about for Brandon. Well, one, for both of you, I was like, when I came to this room, I was like, this feels like a love letter to color. Like, I love it. But I was curious about your use of, so obviously there's an element of the surreal and transcendent when it comes to like clothing transporting you to another place. But I was curious about faces because some faces are so clearly defined and others are blurred out. And is that like you're talking about how you're a private person, you're a father, is that like for privacy, to protect the privacy of your child or the people in your paintings, or is there some other motive for like kind of like removing one's facial features from the painting?
Yeah, so there's like 2 answers to it. So my wife and I, we discussed this when Donna was born, about posting her on like social media, and she was against it. And I'm like, well, what's the pros and cons? And she like listed the cons, like just. And I was like, okay, all right, cool. We can agree, like, okay, all right, I'll just put her in the stories, but not on my posts. All right, whatever. So I think for like that sort of triggered, that fired this thing about identity and protection and privacy and all these different things. So like I felt like in these paintings, the only person that I would expose was me, risking myself. And in terms of like the work moving forward, I am sort of moving away from just like representational, because you can sort of see or you can recognize people even when they're blurry. You can make so more personal. I can't see, so I wear glasses. Most people who have glasses wear contacts. But in that process of like studying vision, I'm like, well, I can still recognize or like, things are still representational even when they're blurry. And then the airbrush is a tool that allows soft, like, layers of paint to build up without touching the surface. So there's like a distance between the surface. So I'm just kind of processing like the poetics of like, just not giving everything away, not making everything so clear and so, that's my long answer to that question.
Thank you. One more?
Can I ask it?
You sure can.
Who was it that said this was a love letter to color?
I'll read that.
That's beautiful. And Inez is the person who envisioned this, planned it, laid the groundwork. But for me, what was so incredible about seeing the work in the space is you have this color story where certain works are really very, exactly like matching, like speaking to each other in a really beautiful way. And then I think the other thing that really struck me that it's quite unusual among painters. And if you're a fiber artist, you're a painter, whatever. But you're both using colors that are natural, almost like hand-dyed or like from natural sources, and also colors that are very artificial. Both of the work, and usually those kind of colors don't work. There's a dissonance between the color. So I guess that's an observation, but I don't know if that's something that interests you or it's more just about sort of the way that it impacts your eyes. But for me, just looking at these pieces from a distance, coming in up close, like this green one though, like the ocean, like it's a very yellowy green, a natural green. It looks real, but the rest of it is almost like an industrial green, right? It's like a man-made color, right? So, but I'm seeing it in these pieces as well. So I think the fact that there's so much that these pieces give you from a distance and also up close, but just in terms of color theory, you're sort of breaking the rules and making it work. And I think that's really interesting as well.
Big compliment.
So I guess it's not a big question, but if you have an opinion on artificial versus natural color, or you don't care, it's just all color, curious about that. But to me, that it just makes it all come together in such a gorgeous and like yummy way.
Yeah, no comment now.
Thank you for that question. Thank you all for being here, Kara. If there's no more questions, I want to give y'all time to be amongst each other and be amongst the work. And I also wanted to thank the BmoreArt team for having me. This is my first moderated artist panel. If I can say something as I keep dropping my phone to Inez, thank you for hearing me when I told you that this is something that I wanted to do more of in 2025 and beyond, and to be seen as a capital A artist. It is a privilege to be seen by you all, but to folks like you all in this way, and this has just been a really beautiful experience from top to bottom, and this couldn't have been a better way to start my moderating career.